and the pectoralis, and sending branches across the axilla to the axillary glands and the subscapularis. It anastomosis with the internal mammary, subscapular and intercostal arteries, and with the pectoral branch of the thoracoacromial. In the female it supplies the external mammary branch, which turns around the free edge of the pectoralis major and supplies the mamma. 4. The subscapular artery, arteria subscapularis. The largest branch of the axillary artery arises at the lower border of the subscapularis, which it follows to the inferior angle of the scapula, where it anastomoses with the lateral thoracic and intercostal arteries, and with the descending branch of the transverse cervical, and ends in the neighboring muscles. About 4 centimeters from its origin it gives off a branch, the scapular circumflex artery. The scapular circumflex artery, arteria circumflexa scapulae, dorsalis scapulae artery, is generally larger than the continuation of the subscapula. It curves around the axillary border of the scapula, traversing the space between the subscapularis above, teres major below, and the long head of the triceps laterally. It enters the infraspinatus fossa, under cover of the teres minor, and anastomoses with the transverse scapular artery and the descending branch of the transverse cervical. In its course it gives off 2 branches. One, infrascapular, enters the subscapular fossa beneath the subscapularis, which it supplies, anastomosing with the transverse scapular artery and the descending branch of the transverse cervical. The other is continued along the axillary border of the scapula, between the teres major and minor, and at the dorsal surface of the inferior angle anastomosis with the descending branch of the transverse cervical. In addition to these, small branches are distributed to the back part of the deltoideus and the long head of the triceps brachii, anastomosing with the ascending branch of the arteria profunda brachii. 5. The posterior humeral circumflex artery, arteria circumflexa humeri posterior, posterior circumflex artery, arises from the axillary artery at the lower border of the subscapularis, and runs backward with the axillary nerve through the quadrangular space bounded by the subscapularis and teres minor above, the teres major below, the long head or the triceps brachii medially, and the surgical neck of the humerus laterally. It winds around the neck of the humerus and is distributed to the deltoideus and shoulder joint, anastomosing with the anterior humeral circumflex and profunda brachii. 6. The anterior humeral circumflex artery, arteria circumflexa humeri anterior, anterior circumflex artery, considerably smaller than the posterior, arises nearly opposite it, from the lateral side of the axillary artery. It runs horizontally beneath the coracobrachialis and short head of the biceps brachii in front of the neck of the humerus. On reaching the intertubercular sulcus, it gives off a branch which ascends the sulcus to supply the head of the humerus and the shoulder joint. The trunk of the vessel is then continued onward beneath the long head of the biceps brachii and the deltoideus, and anastomoses with the posterior humeral circumflex artery. Peculiarities. The branches of the axillary artery vary considerably in different subjects. Occasionally the subscapular, humeral circumflex, and profunda arteries arise from a common trunk, and when this occurs the branches of the brachial plexus surround this trunk instead of the main vessel. Sometimes the axillary artery divides into the radial and ulnar arteries, and occasionally it gives origin to the volar interosseous artery of the forearm. End of section 19. Recording by Ellie, August 2009.